So today I talked to Barry Austin. He is a pro mountain bike coach to international mountain bike athletes. And we're going to talk about the law of averages. And we share and discuss 3 key traits needed to perform at your absolute best and taking your financial planning practice and business and your value proposition to a completely new level. This Current Affairs, Coach's Corner, and Brandworks coming up. So stay tuned. A warm good morning to you on this beautiful Friday morning. Thank you very much for joining us live, and really looking forward to today's episode. Something completely different, and something where, like, I've been wanting to do this for quite a long time, where I talk to people outside of our profession and sort of learn from them and see what they do, and then see how do we make it applicable to what we do and what can we learn from that. And today is sort of the kickoff of that series. And I'm very fortunate to have Barry Austin with us. I'll tell you a little bit more about Barry later on and introduce him to you. Obviously, you're going to get into quite an interesting conversation with him. So very, very excited for that. I said to him before the show, I've never marketed a show so much as this one before in the other 161 episodes that we've done to date. This is the one that I think is really bringing a lot of fire and inspiration and a lot of learnings from that. So a lot of insights. I'm really looking forward to that. And as always, obviously, we have the Current Affairs brought to you by the FPI, and David is with us this morning. And then we also have Norma with Coach's Corner. And today, for the first time, one of the new segments, which is Brandworks, brought to you by PROpulsion and Razan Westhuizen. Right, here we go.
So kicking off with the current affairs, I think the FSCA has released a consultation paper with regards to the listing requirements of the JSE, entitled Cutting the Red Tape. So for those of you who do work with shares and stocks and JSE listings, quite an interesting read to look at. In addition to the JSE paper, I think what's quite interesting from the current affairs is Eskom taking some work to actually recover some of the millions in debt that is owed to them, and I think that can be good for the country. We've seen reports of places like Sandton City Mall, SARS in Pretoria, and other institutions actually having their power cut off, as both Tshwane and Joburg are embarking on a huge collection of debts. Then from a financial planning perspective, and this ties into the bride story that I'm going to talk about, is obviously longevity planning is becoming more and more important in terms of what financial planners do. I think the talk has been about that, the person is alive today who's going to live to 200. So the question is, when you're doing your financial planning, what are you doing to look at longevity planning and plan for people's second lives after their retirement age of 65, and how long are you planning for retirement? So that's very interesting in terms of the conversations that we are having with clients about retirement planning. And as I say, that ties into the news story for the BRI events. So Charles Darwin's pet, okay, so not technically his pet, but after the tour of the Galapagos Islands, Charles Darwin brought back a 5-year-old tortoise he named Harriet. She outlived her adopter by 124 years, ultimately making it to 176 years old. Harriet lived out her final years as part of the Steve Irwin crocodile hunter in Australia until she passed away in 2006. So longevity planning is now not only for tortoises, but also for clients of financial planners. So thank you very much, and back to you in the studio, Francois.
Yeah, what an interesting way to start the show this morning. And so definitely not. Luckily, I don't have to worry about getting to 200 apparently, because I was born too long ago. Me and Halley's Comet came sort of at the same time apparently, or at least when he made his turn around the earth, I also made mine. And but with that, let's head on over to Coach's Corner and listen to Norma. Today she talks about why we tend to believe certain things and why not. And this is going to be very interesting. And I think it's something that all of us are going to get a lot of value from. So with that, over to Norma.
Good morning. So today we're talking about thoughts. If you can remember from last week, we spoke about why we're not taking action. And then we weren't creating the fuel that was leading us to take action. So today we're looking at our thoughts, which is really the thing that creates how we feel and the fuel that's going to drive us forward. So if we look at our thoughts, that's really the starting point, and it can be the end point to all of our problems and our unnecessary suffering. So things happen in our world, as you know, that we don't have any control over. But what we make it mean is going to determine what is happening next. So if I take this example where things happen that I don't have control over, like my car breaking down. So I can think of it in one of two ways. I can think of it, why does this always happen to me, which is going to make me feel horrible? Or I can think, this is happening for me, which is going to make me feel maybe open and creative to think of new ways or new solutions. So we have more or less 60,000 thoughts per day. So a lot of it is unintentional, but a lot of it is also intentional. A lot of it is serving us, and a lot of it might not be serving us. And we have to remember that the ones that we practice most is the ones that are going to be showing up most. So the problem isn't really that we have these thoughts that's not serving us, because that was really just part of life. The problem is that we actually believe those thoughts without even questioning it. So we just accept it as the truth. So we don't ask any questions, we don't get curious about it, and we don't even ask ourselves why we have those thoughts. So we also have to remember that our brain really is wired for survival. So it wants to keep us safe and alive. And what has got us to where we are today is this motivational triad. So it is us seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, and conserving energy. So if we want to move from where we are now to growing and evolving and becoming the best version of ourselves, evolving even further, we have to really do the opposite of what we've done up until now. So instead of looking for instant gratification, we need to maybe look for longer-term gratification and that long-term reward. And we have to move towards pain, what our brain sees as pain. So if we, for instance, working towards our goals, we're going to have self-doubt, we're going to be discouraged at some point, we're maybe going to be frustrated, but that isn't a reason to stop, that we can have those things running in the background and still move forward. Also, conserving energy. So maybe sitting on the couch is conserving energy, but if we're working towards our goals, we're going to have to do the hard things. That's going to take a lot of brain power and physical effort and energy to move closer to where we want to be. So we need to then become aware of what is happening in our minds so that we are be in that like power position to change it. So the best way I know how to see what is happening in my mind is to do like a brain dump. So that simply just means everything that's happening in my mind, I write about for, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how much time you have, on a regular basis. If that can happen on a daily basis, that's great. So we have all of those thoughts and things happening in our mind, which is like this ball of yarn that's all tangled and twisted inside our mind. But once we get everything out on paper, it's like we see it from a new perspective. So now we can see and separate really what is fact and what is story, because our brain loves to exaggerate and maybe jump always to the worst case scenario. But once things are on paper, we can easily see, okay, this is fact, and this is really the story that I'm telling about it. We can also see all those shoulds and shouldn'ts we have for ourselves, because as you know, we love doing the things that we want to do, but we don't really like those things that we think we should be doing. And also, once things are on paper, we can also see those manuals that we have for other people. So what we think they should be doing or they shouldn't be doing. So our brain offers us all of these thoughts on a daily basis, but it's really up to us at the end to decide what we're going to make it mean and if we're going to believe what our brain offers us. And we always have the choice. And once we make that choice, that is going to determine our life experience really at the end. So that's it for me. Thanks for listening. I'll be back next week.
All right. So, yeah, some interesting thoughts there. Thanks for that, Norma. And now for just a quick few announcements, as we always do. And let's just, I don't know, give us a little bit of background music for this. All right. So, some of the things that I need to share with you and that I would like to share with you this morning is, one, please remember to go and register your seat for the complimentary budget review session, which is taking place on Thursday. So this is next week, Thursday, so it's coming quickly. The budget speech is happening on the 23rd. So that very next morning, I will be presenting the session, and you're welcome to go and book. It's very easy to do that. You can just simply go to propulsion.co.za/budget 2022, and you can book your seat there. It's going to be online. It's a live session. And it is fully with our compliments. It's the one complimentary session we do that gives CPD for the year. So 1.5 CPD points it has been approved for. So please join us for that session. It will definitely be well worth your time. What we do is we look at obviously what's being said in the budget, but there's always a lot of things that are not said in the budget. And those are the things that we then get into, and we sort of look at that and we see how does that impact financial planning for you and your clients. So that's the big part of it. And then we also sort of recap on what are the latest things that were actually enacted into law in January this year from the previous budget speech, because there were a few changes from what they initially set out to do to what they actually did. So it's a great session, covers a lot of stuff, very practical and focused on what we do as financial planners. So that's the first one. The second thing I want to sort of share with you is that I was a guest on the Nick Elston show. And that episode is this coming Monday, the 21st of February. And I will definitely share. We will put the link down in the description below once it has released. And I must say, it's one of those interviews that I think it's my favorite to date, because I've shared so many things. Nick is a phenomenal interviewer, and the insights and things that he makes you think of. So I shared a lot of stuff that I haven't shared before. You'll get to know me quite a lot better on the back of that. So really something to look at, and also go and look for the Nick Elston show. There's a YouTube channel, but there's also it's actually a podcast, so you can find it everywhere. So please go and have a look at that. Subscribe to his channel, subscribe to his podcast. He really does phenomenal work, specifically in the mental wellness space. And he works a lot with financial planners. So have a look at that. Then lastly, let me just take off the banner here on the screen. You can see our social media handle, Propulsion Live. Please go and follow us or connect with us on these different platforms. So there's TikTok, Facebook. Well, can you believe Facebook? Instagram. Yes, I haven't got a Propulsion Live page on LinkedIn, but we do have the Propulsion Learning and Technology page. You can find us there as well. And then obviously Twitter as well. So just building sort of the connections on there. I'm more active on the Instagram page at this stage, but we're definitely bringing more clips and things from the show to the other platforms as well. But please go and follow us for that. And then if you haven't subscribed yet to the YouTube channel, which is the main thing, this is where everything happens, then please consider doing so. It doesn't cost you anything. Please hit that subscribe button. We were on 976 this morning. I believe Ichner became a subscriber, so he is now number 977. And we're really trying hard to get to that 1,000 subscribers. And it's been almost a 2-year journey now, and we really would like to hit that in the next few days. So please, if you can, hit that subscribe button. All right, so now I'm very excited to get into today's featured topic, or the featured guest of the show, which is Barry Austin. I'm going to let him introduce himself. I will give you a little bit about him and how him and I know each other. But before I do, let's get into this segment. There you go. Good morning, Barry.
Morning, Francois. Morning, everybody.
I was a warm welcome to the show, Barry. Like, I think I spoke to you about being on the show like a while back, like a long time ago. I said, like, would you ever be willing to come on the show? And you said yes. And then everything just happened and life happened. And then about a year later, you and I caught up when I was in Cape Town for December. And then, well, we had all these amazing sort of conversations. And that just screamed at me and said, like, man, you got to come on the show. So thank you so much. I don't think this is in your natural sort of arena.
Nope.
So this is something else for you.
Yeah, totally new, but yeah, let's try.
Yeah, absolutely. So Barry and I actually went to school together, and I must say, and I've said to him, please thank your mom for me every time I see him, because like if it wasn't for his mom, I wouldn't be able to present today in English. She's the one that taught me English, and not at school. My mom actually sent me for extra English classes to Barry's mom in Henneman. So that's where we're all from. And yeah, we used to spend, and I can remember Barry being this young, when we were still boys, I think we were like obviously in high school, and then you always saw Barry on his bicycle. Like I think he was the first guy in Henneman to have like a road cycling bike, not a normal, like these wide-handled bikes or some BMX or something. You know, like he was the guy in a cycling kit on this, and you saw him every single day, and that was at school. And today, I mean, Barry, like you've had such an interesting career up to now, ups and downs, and things that don't always just go your way. And that's, I want to get into a lot of that. But before I talk too much, like just maybe a brief introduction about who you are.
Yeah, I'm a UCI level 3 coach, but obviously that's just a qualification that you do in a course in Switzerland. I started in road cycling as a coach, really interested into try and find out how to develop South African athletes in the international arena, and what we were lacking and what we need to do to grow from the local scene. And that developed later into becoming a performance manager on some of the pro teams, just studying efficiency and trying to figure out what's the best way to get the most out of an athlete in terms of using the environment and the athlete's physical and mental abilities. And that then, you know, sort of like I left the coaching a little bit in that period. It was just after then I became the national cycling manager at the London Olympics. After that, just into pro cycling, and then from there I met an athlete who really asked me to already push me back into the coaching arena, and inspired me to take it up again full time. It's about 7 years ago. And been working on that. Moved into a lot of my coaching, moved into the mountain biking side. It was really exciting. It's a really new field, lots of challenges, and just grew from that onwards. And I tried to really see from an outsider's perspective into that sport, from road cycling to mountain bike, and what they were missing, and try to help with that. And through that, it sort of like started moving in towards helping corporate clients getting the most out of their time that they have. So they didn't have the hours and hours the pros had. And I wanted to see what I can do to typically help a corporate with a really difficult, busy lifestyle go and ride the epic in an enjoyable fashion. And then, yeah, the passion grew from that in solving those problems. And now I coach people from absolute beginners right through to world champions. So super nice journey.
Yeah, it's such an amazing story. But I want to take you back, like for so many of us, right? If you think where we come from, so we were born in 1975. So it means that we finished primary school in the late 80s, then went to high school. And sort of that was still early 90s when we finished high school. Because luckily Barry and I we passed every single year. So luckily it didn't take too long. net. But yeah, so we did that. And at that time, I think if you think about that, was just as the internet became something. So, I mean, the information at hand, the opportunities, the possibilities, we all did those. What are you sort of, those aptitude tests that you do, and you sort of say, oh, this, and then the answers come, and then they say, oh, you can do anything. Like we all got those answers, and mom and dad paid quite an amount for those tests, right? But then, I mean, your thing also took this sort of turn where you sort of went and studied something else, sort of like many other parents would insist, like, listen, go do it. Like, how can you make money from cycling? Or how can you make money from talking about Smurfs? Or how can you make money from whatever it is that we were passionate about and what we're into? And you went and studied engineering, right?
Yeah. So I got a bursary from Anglo American, went to study engineering, but used some of the bursary funds that I got extra to study just physical education at nighttime. And and when I was done with that, I actually just left for Europe, packed everything, and sold all my little car, sold that, got on a plane, and took my bike and wanted to see what it's like to race a bike in Europe.
Yeah, and that's the amazing thing, right? So I think, and I'll get to why I sort of bring this into the story, because it's for me an important thing that you and I spoke about in December or in early January, because we saw each other twice. Was this whole thing around, you sort of, this is what you want to go and do, or at least this is what you want to go and explore. Because, like, I mean, Barry, you are one of the most curious people that I know. And you haven't stopped since we were at school. It was also, I always learned the most wonderful things from you, because you were always into learning something new. And from our conversation, I gather that just simply hasn't stopped. I think, in fact, it's become, I won't say worse, but it's definitely become more of a thing for you, and we'll get into that. But years later, so you do this engineering thing on the insistence, and then you pack up everything, you go to Europe, you go and experience travel, do a lot of things there, do what you want to do. And then later on, you get into this coaching thing. But there's one specific thing where we actually spoke about. There was this new thing that came about, and because of your engineering background and because of this new technology that came in, you said a lot of coaches didn't understand what that was and what it could do. So sort of talk me a little bit through that, because that was such an interesting thing where, because the lesson in it for me is that sometimes we do things that we don't want to do, and we don't see the value, and we don't see why I should even do this. And years later, suddenly two things come together. So talk me a little bit through that.
Yeah, so basically, when I went to Europe, I discovered, okay, what we do here in biking and what they do there is totally different, and we need to find ways to get up to speed. It's mostly to do with their racing is on really tight and difficult terrain, and we've got really open spaces, not a lot of turns, big bunches. We have small bunches, so I had to try and figure out ways. So that was sort of like that curious mind of mine that started working overtime. And then as I started settling into the coaching business, the power meters were invented and introduced into the market. And suddenly, where people with coaching was like, let's call it, it's physiology and biology, and that was the majors. Suddenly, engineering stepped in, and the law of physics in terms of how these things work and what does it mean, and what does a power meter really tell you. And that's where the engineering helped me really quickly to connect the two. And actually, I think that's where my teaching took a big leap forward, because suddenly, when people were still trying to figure out how to use this new tool, I took the opportunity through something that I really didn't actually want to do, but I was fortunate enough to have done it. And I could incorporate it into the coaching and immediately see really good results, because I could make a definite pattern and plan in terms of the programming from the engineering side. And it was a super exciting time, and it was really nice to see sort of like you were doing something on, I would say, small scale or a small personal scale with some athletes, and then later on you'd see literature coming out of, this is the way a training plan should look with a power meter, and you're like, oh no, we did that. Oh yeah, that's something that we tried as well, and we developed in this direction. So I've never been a big extrovert or marketer of stuff. So, but it was really nice to see those things being introduced at a later stage. But you've covered that part already, and that journey from engineering to coaching was an interesting one, and it's still one I use to this day. In terms of figuring out algorithms for efficiency and for adaptation to environment.
Yeah, and that's such an important thing. And my mind is still blown around how amazing it is that suddenly these two things, because now it meant that you were, I don't know if light years is maybe the right, or if it's a fair comment, but I mean, you were quite a lot ahead of other people, and now for others to catch up to you, I think becomes so difficult, because you are already ahead, and now while you're learning new things, they're trying to learn what you've already figured out. So you're always that sort of, as long as you keep learning, you stay ahead. Is that sort of a fair comment?
Yeah, so as long as you're curious, exactly. So you keep on staying curious, and then you'll stay ahead. There's a thing about arrived. It's the same thing I say to a lot of my athletes. The medal ceremony is 10 or 1 minute long, but learning is a lifetime. Or growing and improving yourself is a lifetime experience. So if you're just riding just for the medal ceremony, that feeling and that bliss is nice, but it doesn't carry you every day. It doesn't motivate you to get up and go do the job every day. But getting up and doing it and knowing that today I know more and I am more, that satisfaction is something that I really feed off of. It's just and it's just the energy between people and growing from that. So taking that, it helped me. I think the negative side is that if I had the platform of support around me, I could have made something really big of it in the beginning already, so it took some time, but that's how all of our lives work this way, so the platform maybe wasn't there, but I stayed curious enough to carry on.
And you know what, I think there's more value in that, Barry. I'll tell you why. So I had a discussion, I attended a session quite a while back, but the guy who started Vuyo's Wors, so there was that advert, obviously on TV about Vuyo's Wors, but there's a guy that actually then went there, he bought the brand, and he started this Boerewors shop, if you will, in different places. So he started off, and we were talking about, because a lot of people will start a business, they raise money, they like having resources and people and things get involved, and they build this thing very, very quickly. And sometimes it still fails, and sometimes it works. So you're never guaranteed in any event. But we were talking about that after this thing, and I was talking to him, and we were saying, like, it's because he showed a graph to say, like, how long did it take him? It took like 7 years before there's even any kind of breakout. Now, I personally believe that there's more value in that taking longer than it is getting there quicker, because you really get to know the ins and outs, and you really get to go through the challenges and the struggles, and you really build character in that time, because nobody's making it easy for you. And I think, yes, we could do more things more quickly, but I think the value, like once you now get going, once that hockey stick effect starts taking effect, it's like, it's fine. I think you make up for that time, although it doesn't always feel like it.
Yeah, I think I would say what it did help me do is, because you explore, you go like a lot of little rabbit holes you go down. This thing is the new thing. That thing is the thing that will help the most. You do this, and it's nutrition, and it's, equipment, and just going all over the show. And then later on, you just realize it's the human, and you sort of, and all those small things, they play a small part, but none of those small things become a big thing. And that's what I think the biggest lesson I've taken from it. The big thing is the person, and the small things stay the small things. So some small things make a big performance difference at the top level, but it will always be a small thing. And I think that journey helped me with that part.
Yeah, and just because it's a small thing doesn't mean it's not important. I think that's a big part of it. Yeah. So let's get into this human thing, right? There's one particular thing. I laughed so hard. I remember, like, it was so brilliant for me. Like, when we spoke about this thing about being average and not being average, like that for me is a conversation that I want to have over and over with you. But just from that point, if you think about it, I mean, in pro sports, so let's just, I think in anywhere in life, so whether it's your professional, whether you just in your career or your personal life or anything like that, being average, simple doesn't cut it. I mean, it's for me as simple as that. But you have a very particular philosophy about this, and specifically in your personal life and your family life and so forth as well. So there's no place for average there. I know. So I mean, what is this philosophy, and why is it so important to you, Barry?
Yeah, so basically, my kids, they're not super fan of this, but they come to me, and then when we are talking about something, they say, yeah, but everyone's doing it. I'm like, cool. So if everyone's doing it, that means that it's like the average person's doing it. Then they said to me, yeah. So that means the average person's doing it means you're not brilliant, you're just average. So maybe you shouldn't be doing what everyone's doing. Maybe you should be doing something different or something more or in a different way. And that's so it's actually just the changing from, but everyone's doing it to, the average person's doing it. And the average person is the person that's surviving, and it's not the person that's the killer or not a real killer, but or the hunter. And that's the way I try and explain and try and teach my kids. I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it backfires a lot of times, but I still believe in that. Every time I make a decision and it seems like it's what everybody does, then I go and sit and say to myself, okay, that's average. Do I want to be that?
Yeah, and it's so, and I guess also there's value in just at least reflecting on that and saying, is this average, yes or no? Because it could be like, I mean, but chances are if everybody's doing it, it's not might be the right thing to do, but it doesn't make it exceptional. It doesn't make it next level. And I want to bring that back to what we do in financial planning practices, is where, what we deliver, our value propositions, how we engage with clients, it's the same as everybody else, because that's the way we've been taught. So does that then mean we average? And that's a big question to ask ourselves, and to really go and sit and say, well, now going back to what you said earlier, it's the small things that make the big difference. Although the small thing will always stay the small thing, what's that small thing we can do to actually take it to the next level? So that's something to consider in your practice and in your business, and even in your career. I don't think it's only just about running a practice or doing anything. You may be doing something else in the industry or the profession, and therefore that can make a big difference. I want to sort of ask you around, how do I identify that? So the one thing is, yes, if everybody's doing it, that kind of thing, that's one. Is there any other signpost along the way that would actually should, or that is maybe screaming at me, I'm just choosing to ignore them, that look, but you're being average, Francois, come, it's time to do something else?
Yeah, so I think, with my athletes, when we go over a race scenario, it's your mind, the fight or flight scenario in your mind is, we change a little bit. It's not to flight, it's fight or survival. So you have a survival instinct and you have a winning or a killing instinct. And a lot of the times when there's unsurety, or you just, you're not confident, then you start shifting back to your survival instinct into your race or your race situation. And that's when you're going to ask yourself the question, if what I do now so in our sports, like the next move I do now, will I for sure win or will I for sure not win? So it's, for example, if you're going into a really technical piece of riding in mountain biking, and you know that if you're not positioned well now, then for sure you will not win. But you can say to yourself, I'm not feeling good. So I don't want to go to the front now. I'm not really sure. So you're giving to the I'm not feeling good thoughts in your mind. Then you go into that difficult piece in the third or fourth position. For sure today you will not win. So that choice is a survival choice. But even if you're not feeling good, and you know that choice you have to make now is the one that makes you win, then you have to go and make it. Whether you're going to win from it or not, it still gives you a chance to win and puts you in that position to go and win for that day. It doesn't go and, it doesn't give you the resigned or the survival position of I will finish today. It takes you to I will win today. So yeah, it's choosing when there's decisions along the way, it's really going and pinpointing and saying, okay, that decision gives me a chance to win, or that decision gives me a chance to survive. And there's different scenarios you need to take into account. But most of the time, if you want to progress or into the top tier, it's the one that makes you win that you have to go and choose. And it's a fine choice. I had it the other day with two athletes. The one won the race and the other one didn't, and quite a big race. And the one guy made that choice. Irrespective of if he was going to be good at it, he had to put himself in the position to give himself a chance to be good at it. And that was the two different choices made by two top pro athletes, and the one won the race and the one was second.
And I'm standing here thinking now, so I want to ask you this. If you think about all the things you just said, so it basically comes down to, well, one, you need to become aware around whether you're being average or not. Secondly, then you need to make a decision whether you're okay with that or not. And then thirdly, you need to take action. But my question now is, if you think about, like, whenever we talk about sports and pro athletes and things, like, we think about these highly competitive, highly driven individuals. And there's a lot of people watching that's going to go, I'm not competitive. It's just not in my personality. It's not in my nature. So my question then is being competitive or having a competitive nature a prerequisite for being above average?
No, it's not.
Being exceptional, for that matter.
Yeah, no, it's not a prerequisite. It's about reflecting on choice, So what we're doing is that it's easier. It's like television and a lot of social media. It's easier just to follow and get in the stream and not make decisions, make small hard decisions or just small changes, So that's the easier thing to do. So the universe works that way. The universe wants us to go and say, okay, we need to go back to chaos. We need to go and say, let's get the world back to sort of like a state of chaos. And the human nature is that energy that you produce to remove yourself from that state of chaos. So, but some people have huge steps in this, and those are the excellent athletes, the excellent mathematicians, the brilliant, folks out there, the 1%ers, they do that, and a lot of us aren't that. I don't even think I'm one of those. But you must respect and use that energy that they pioneered, and then play your part in small energy expenditures to also build a step and build on forward. So yeah, you don't have to be that super 1% right at the edge of growing humanity, but you're going to have to do that little 1% of yourself to go with that flow of excellence. So it's small steps, nothing big. It's just this one step. I'll sit today and I'll either go and just exercise. I'll sit today and say, okay, cool. I'm not going to go and ride the Cape Epic cycle tour, but I'll go and walk around the block, and it's something new. Or I'll just go and walk my dogs, or I'll put my phone down and spend time with family or whatever. So just one small good decision a day is one small good decision above the average that people say, oh, but everyone's doing it. So it's a thing that happens with bringing up children as well. Everyone's doing this now these days. All the kids are on that. It's our choice. It's not their choice. It's our choice to let them do it or not. And make small choices in a different direction and experiment and see. Stay curious.
Yeah, I love it. Barry's handle on Instagram, by the way, is Barry is Curious. So if you want to go check him out, he takes the most amazing photos and videos and things. His social media game on Instagram is really next level. So you need to go and check that out. I want to get into the 3 traits. Like you and I spoke about this. There's sort of 3 traits or elements or aspects that every pro athlete would need in order to really become exceptional and be at the top of their game and the top of whatever sport that they are in. And these are 3, this is actually the thing that triggered me to sort of get you on the show, Barry, because this is 3 things that apply to life, never mind to sport. And there was such a strong connection for me between the 2. And I want to get into these 3 and I mean, these 3 things, do you want to share that with us? And go okay, so these 3 things, and then we'll get into each one of them and why they're a requirement and everything. But just what are these 3 things?
Okay, yeah. So the 3 stresses in terms of performance is adversity, diversity, and intensity. They are used to sort of grow or improve someone's adapt someone physically, mentally, and environmentally. So all the platforms of where you're going to go and perform is in my sport is physical, mental, and environmental adaptation, and the stresses for this will be your adversity, diversity, and intensity. For every person in every scenario, these things are in different ratios applicable to any of those 3 places that you want to go and develop in. So but yeah, I would have, for instance, an athlete in Denmark who their lifestyle is really organized and really well developed. So they have this space for energy to be focused on intensity. And when you come to Africa, you have to go and take an athlete in Africa, and there's so much adversity and diversity that they don't have the energy for intensity. So removing some of the things, creating stability from some others, these stresses are what you play around with to develop someone.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about intensity first. So what is when we talk about intensity, what is that actually about? Because that for me is about focus and being they say being that killer or hunter or on that winning, that's the focus. I need to be the best. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, intensity is the one we want to achieve in pro sport or in high level sport. Is the one that you want someone to be able to focus on. So the adversity and diversity are mostly the detractors of this. But what is important is that a detractor of something is also something you can go and train someone in. So if someone always gets detracted by adversity within the sport itself and outside the sport itself, you have to either remove it or make them used to it. And then when that happens, then they can focus on intensity. So it's really, really so one of the biggest goals in athlete development, especially in this field or at the top end of sport, is really identifying which one of these is a trait that the athlete has inherent in them, and which one of them is something that's dragging them down. And then it's applying certain principles to get them used to the one, and then or removing adversity from the outside so that it's not applicable inside. So if you take it to a job, it's you have this inside the job and you have an outside the job, and if you want to progress to intensity and being able to focus on it. It's what have you done to manage the adversity and the diversity in your arena.
I mean, you do some interesting things to help some of these international, I mean, you literally bring people to South Africa, and then you do like quite interesting things with them, specifically, I think with adversity, you know, to sort of, because adversity for me feels that is when something is out of the norm, you're out of your comfort zone, you can't just focus on the intensity. So as you said, these things detract you from focusing on the intensity. So now there's these things happening, and for you it's like, oh, my world is like upside down and all that kind of stuff. So what are the kind of things that you do with your athletes to help them with adversity, to not be so fazed by it or so influenced by it?
Yeah, so I have a phase of training called accumulation. Some other coaches call it base training, but accumulation is my accumulation of resilience. So mostly it's endurance and strength, but it's also endurance and strength in all your weaknesses, mentally and physically and environmentally. So I would take, for instance, an athlete that comes from an area where everything is always focused in sports, always manicured around them, that they can do everything. And I was like, cool, we're going to go and do a ride today. And I know that it stresses them that they can't go and do an exact ride as planned. So I'll get lost the whole time with them, or I'll show them wrong directions and I'll frustrate them. And you can see that frustration building in the ride. And then I'd say, but things don't always go your way. You have to manage it. So then they have to still manage the day and still be satisfied with the day with all these me getting lost the whole time. Other things, I'll take them on different excursions, hiking or rock climbing or anything that's completely out of what they normally do. If they have fear of something, we try and face this fear in a responsible manner, but really just opening up. And it's quite amazing that I always say there's a certain gravitas that people attribute to something happening in their life, and a lot of this gravitas or weight that they attribute to a certain happening, whether it be in cycling a puncture or a crash, is sometimes overly exaggerated because you're just carrying it with you. That's a bad thing that happened, when it's just a thing that happened. It's for sure not beneficial, but it's not something you have to carry with you. You have to shake it off. So doing this adversity and diversity training helps them shake off the gravitas of negative things that happen around them. It happens, deal with it, carry on, type of thing. And once you get a new programming in the mind that it understands that these things are not the end of the world, it's for sure not nice, but you can deal with it and carry on with your job, carry on with your goal of living intensely. Then you can see the big game. So taking them to the Cederberg heights, let them walk on ledges that are quite high or whatever. So it's different scenarios. For South Africans, they have to go their diversity or adversity in a European race is small roads and really lots of obstacles in the road, like we call it traffic furniture. And I'd let them ride on the cycle path to Cape Town in a big bunch. And not a big speed, but close to each other. And you can see that even at a lower speed, how tired they become because they have to focus on different things. And making that focus on the stuff, the noise around you, creating, I'd say, music from the noise so that you can be intense. That's one of the things that we do as well. So it's not specifically training the task, it's training the detractor from the task. And then when the detractor from your task becomes a normality or manageable, then you can focus on your intensity.
Yeah, there's something that comes out, and at the beginning of last year when I was driving down from Joburg to Cape Town to take my daughter's car there, it was sort of a second. I know what's going on in my throat now, but I was just like, as I was going down, there were areas, because I've never driven down to Cape Town in my life. I've always flown. And just because I'm so much like my time is everything. Like I can't spend 12 hours in the car, driving somewhere and back. It's 24 hours. It becomes too much. But I had to drive down with a car, and I was just seeing all these different things and thinking how different people live and what their circumstances are and what they have to deal with, which is normal to them, but not normal to me. And something that's now jumping out of me that I haven't thought of before when we spoke about this is simply the fact that, now suddenly we get into this, like, if you really want to grow, then one of the things you need to do is then to put yourself in a different environment. So if you are getting uncomfortable, certain things, go put yourself in that environment to get comfortable with it, because you got comfortable with the environment you're in currently. And the only thing that really makes you uncomfortable is when, well, you have to learn something new that you don't know yet, or you have to develop a new skill, or your environment suddenly changes. Those are kind of, I think, the main things.
Yeah, the biggest thing I have with that is that when people do it, is that they tend to take too big a step. So I think it's a very popular, the flow zone is a very popular graph you can find on the internet. It's a place where you want to always be growing in or be developing in. So it's basically you have you have a new challenge and you have your skill, so your X and Y axis. And if you're above the flow zone, then you become anxious, and if you're below the flow zone, you become bored. But the important thing is to start bored and then just move up into, okay, I don't want to be bored anymore. You want to get to that place where it's exciting and where it's challenging, but you're not anxious. And then you learn there. And then when that becomes boredom again, or creates boredom again, you take one step up. So in any of these things, when you are adapting to adversity and diversity, it's don't be anxious in the step that you take into it, but just be slightly challenged and be excited about that challenge. And then when you do it, then when you've managed that, take the next step. When you manage that, take the next step. So you sort of like stay in this flow zone of challenge versus skill and just above boredom. And this is where I find the most learning and the most productive learning, because then your mind is not in a survival mode, it's in a progressive learning, excited mode, and the learning becomes permanent and not just a quick survival tool where you're missing a few gaps in the process.
Yeah, and one of the questions I wanted to ask you, like for a lot of us, it's fear. I mean, I've spoken about this at length with my wife, not just my fear for certain things, her fears for certain things. And fear is just a normal part of life. And we all have things that we sort of are afraid of. And sometimes it's horrific, and sometimes it's enough to make you uncomfortable. So in business and in financial planning, if you run your practice or you're building your career, developing your career and progressing, etc., there are definitely things that, sort of that your gut are telling you to do these things, but you're just too afraid to take that step. Because what if it doesn't work? What if, because nobody else is doing it? So I'm going to go out and do this, and so I'm going to go out and do this. They're going to think I'm a fool or a clown, or I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm being unprofessional, or whatever sort of dialogue we're telling ourselves, as Norma said, what we choose to believe or not. But if you think about that, like something you said now is, go and do things that challenge you. Or if you have a specific fear that you can in fact identify, go and try and face it head on. But I loved how you said responsibly. So what does that look like maybe from a practical point of view, Barry? I know some of the things you said, people go walk on ledges and do things like that. But if you take it back maybe to a business setting, I mean, what would you advise maybe? What would your thoughts be on how can I face my fears, or how can I address these fears so that I actually turn it? Because I love how you said, turn the noise into music. So it's the same kind of thing here. Like, how do I change my fear into motivation and fear into something positive for myself?
So the noise into music, it's actually, if you take that, it's actually writing the first note, not just trying to play the whole song. And what is the first note? So it's identifying who you are and where you are. So being honest and saying, this is where I am. I have there's a big prevalence of skills coaches in mountain biking in South Africa, and they've got, it looks cool to do X, Y, Z, and they love to do this type of things. But they don't go back right down to the fundamental of what is the basic fear of where it's originating, and when we get to the mountain bike side or the road bike side, it's a lot of times about just balancing on your bike or just being comfortable to balance. And once that is done, and once that weighting is done, you do the next step. So in business, it's like just if you have to write music from noise, you're gonna go and say, okay, cool, can I write music? No. What is music? You go back to can I write? Do I have paper? Do I have a pen? So it's always really going right back to the basic point of, do you have all the tools? And then when you have all the tools, then you go the next step. So if there's a fear, most of those fears are generated by not having the tools to conquer them. And then we go into them, it's like, go back to the song, go write the song. There's a sheet of paper and notes, but you haven't even asked the person, can you write? Are you comfortable with writing, or which language do you write in? So that's when, if you don't have someone helping you with this, a coach in your business, it's where you go into yourself and you say, okay, where am I? If I want to make music from noise, can I write? Yes, I can write. Okay, do I have a pen? No, let me go buy a pen. So if you have a fear of a new step, it's identifying all the small things. Most of the time we make a step just a little bit too big, because when you YouTube something, you Google something, it always takes you from like a medium perspective or intermediate step upwards, but it never identifies just the small basic fear or the basic nuance that's just stopping you from identifying or growing out of that fear. So really sitting down and being honest and breaking it down to very simple, very slow. I do a lot of times we do some flow training in terms of the downhills, and if I want to just remind myself of doing something proper, I go down to snail speed and I understand the connection that I have with my bike and my terrain, and then I carry on. So in business, the only thing, I'm not a great financial planner. I plan human performance, but I think it would most probably be the same in terms of just slowing it down to the manageable aspects that you can handle at that speed that you're at, identifying the one that you struggle with, and then work on it. That's
Awesome.
the first step.
Barry, thank you so much. It was a great conversation. I've got loads of questions I still want to ask, but I'm out of time. Thank you so much. It was brilliant. I'll definitely catch up with you afterwards, but thank you so much for your time, for everything that you shared. Keep on doing the great work, enjoying your life, and just doing good stuff. I just want to add on to what you ended off on now, where once you've done that, be patient, be consistent. But being patient also doesn't mean that you need to take your time. You drive that intensity part and get things done, but be patient. It'll come. So that's sort of my big advice on the back of what Barry has shared with us this morning. Barry, thank you so much. Wish you all the best, and run into you soon.
Thank you for having me, and have a good day, everybody else.
Good stuff. Bye-bye. All right, so then our last segment of this morning. I mean, how awesome. I've got goosebumps. So our last segment for today is the first time we're going to run this segment in the new season, and it's going to be a monthly feature. And we have none other than Razan Oosthuizen talking to us about branding and marketing. And this segment is called Brand Works, because it's something that you should always be working on. It's not a once-off thing. And today, Razan is talking about budgeting for your brand and or for your branding in that case. So let's hear what she's got to say.
A very good Friday morning to everybody. Today we're going to be talking about marketing math. How much should you be spending on your marketing budget, and what is the typical pitfalls and hidden costs that tanks your marketing efforts and drains your marketing budget? So we look at both of those. The typical goal of your marketing budget is two things. One, it'll be annual growth, or it'll be new client acquisition. For instance, how much do I need to grow my business this year by X amount? Or how much do I need to get, say, 50 new clients this year? And then we look at how to achieve that. There are some common, if you don't know exactly what you should be spending on your marketing budget, there are some common benchmarks that we can look at, the averages that we can look at. Just FYI, about 96% to 98% of companies are now spending over 60% of their marketing budget on digital efforts. So if you're a new company, that means you're about 1 to 5 years old, you need to be spending between 12 to 20% of your annual revenue on your marketing budget. If you're an established company, you need to be spending about 6 to 12%. But on average, if you look at the law of the averages, about 10 to 14% is what companies are spending annually on their marketing budget. Now, you might ask, okay, how does this apply to me? Where do I spend that, etc.? So it can get a little bit confusing. And there's an easy hack that I like to apply here. It's the average annual client lifetime value. So if you look at your overall revenue that you have for the year, and you divide that by the amount of clients you have, you now have the amount that is your average annual client lifetime value, right? So let's say that amount is 5,000 Rand. And you decide, well, I want to grow my business, I want to grow my revenue, or I want to grow my client acquisition. And I'm gonna spend 12% or whatever it is that you decide that you're gonna spend. And a lot of the cases, what it is that you decide that you can part with. Often you can, often you have to spend more than what you're willing to part with. So look at those. So let's look at, say, each client is 5,000 Rand, and you're going to spend 12%, that's 600 Rand per client that annually you need to put away, okay? Say you've got 275 clients. Now you're sitting at 160 plus K per client for your annual, and that will be your annual marketing spend that you need to spend. And this is where the problem usually comes in, and this is where the hidden costs comes in, because you're now sitting in a chicken and egg scenario, because a lot of the time you don't have that money lying around. You haven't acquired that money through the previous fiscal year to spend it on the next fiscal year. And then also, if you look at all of the different channels that you need to advertise on to reach your target audience, all of a sudden the budget is now spread a little bit thin. And the hidden costs really come in here, because now you start making up in time for that what you don't have in money. And time also comes at a cost. And this is where we see most marketing plans and marketing budgets fail. So you also, along with your marketing budget, you need to look at your time budget. What is the cost of your time? Bear in mind, to roll out a marketing plan, you also need time to manage the deliverables of the marketing plan. Often enough, marketing plans fail because the timeline between inception and delivery is too long and the parameters of the project changes. So you have to bear in mind how much time can you possibly spend alongside your marketing budget. So you might be time wealthy. That means you could possibly afford some time to throw some time in with your marketing budget, or you might be time poor. Now, if you're time poor, your time is going to be more expensive. And when you're getting to a place where you're spending time faster than you're spending money, you're in a real problem, because now you're going into time debt. And that's not a great place to be. So a good way to fix all of that is, like I said, work out your client hack. How many clients do I have? How much is their annual average? And how much am I willing to go and put, spend on getting new clients, or spend on growing my revenue for the year? Now, take that money, and if you start now, I sound like a financial advisor now. If you start now, then you put that amount per client away. Put it in a marketing savings pocket, whatever you want to call it, but put that away for your client. That means in the next fiscal year, when you get there, you're going to have absolutely no stress on your time, and you're going to have absolutely no stress on your bottom line. I think what often happens is that we see marketing, or a lot of people see marketing as a cost. And that mindset needs to change, because marketing is an investment that grows your business. Marketing is only a cost because of bad marketing planning and bad marketing budgeting. That is when you see deliverables going sideways. And good marketing, and I would say a good investment on marketing, is when you did you reach your deliverables with what you had in your marketing budget. And I would say that is all from me. If there are any other topics that you would like us to address in BrandWorks, please get in touch with either Francois or myself, and go and work out your marketing budget. Thank you.
All right, and on that high note, all I want to say is, please, if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, please do that. We really appreciate it. Like, share this with all your colleagues, everybody that would get great value from this, and even your family, like I think what we talked about with Barry, with Norma, even the things that Razan is talking about today is really applicable to anything in life and any type of business. So please share that with them. It might just change your life, who knows. And on that note, thank you for watching, and remember to raise the bar. Bye-bye.